Greetings, beloved friends. Wherever you are, may the peace of our Lord be with you today. I'm thrilled to share with you a story titled A Call in the Darkness, a tale of faith, struggle, and divine guidance. This is a journey of a young woman named Hannah, who hears God's whisper in her darkest hour, leading her through trials to discover His purpose. It's a story of trusting the one who knows the way, even when the path seems impossible. So, let's dive into this narrative with open hearts, ready to be inspired by the power of God's unending love and direction. Are you ready to walk with Hannah and see how God moves in her life? Let's begin. Hannah sat alone in her small apartment, the dim light of a single lamp casting long shadows across the room. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, each second echoing like a hammer in her mind. She hadn't slept in days, not since the letter arrived. It was a simple envelope, no return address, but the words inside had shattered her world. Your services are no longer needed. Effective immediately. After 5 years at the community center, pouring her heart into helping families in need, she was let go without warning. The center was her life, her purpose, her way of serving God. Now, it was gone, and with it, her sense of direction. She stared at the worn Bible on the coffee table, its pages dog-eared from years of study. "Lord, what am I supposed to do now?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The silence that followed felt heavier than ever. She'd always believed God had a plan, as Jeremiah 29 verse 11 promised, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." But tonight, that promise felt distant, like a star too far to reach. Doubt crept in, whispering that she'd been abandoned, that her faith was misplaced. Hannah's thoughts spiraled. She remembered her childhood, growing up in a small town where her mother taught her to pray every morning. "Talk to God first, Hannah," her mother would say, "and He'll light your path." Those words had carried her through college, through the loss of her father, and into her work at the center. But now, unemployed and alone, she wondered if she'd misheard God's voice all along. Had she been chasing her own dreams, not His? The weight of uncertainty pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She stood and paced the room, her footsteps muffled by the threadbare rug. The apartment was modest, filled with second-hand furniture and memories of better days. A photo on the shelf caught her eye, her and her best friend, Sarah, laughing at a church retreat. Sarah had always been her anchor, the one who reminded her to trust God when life got tough. But Sarah had moved across the country last year, and their calls had dwindled. Hannah longed to hear her friend's voice, to be reminded that God was still there. As she reached for her phone, a sudden gust of wind rattled the window. She froze, heart pounding. The night outside was still, no sign of a storm. Yet the sound felt like a call, a nudge from something or someone greater. She hesitated, then knelt beside the coffee table, her hands trembling as she opened her Bible to Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." The words washed over her, but they didn't erase the fear. "Lord," she prayed, "if you're speaking, help me here. Show me the way." The room grew quiet again, but this time, the silence felt different, like a pause before a revelation. Hannah's eyes fell on a notebook tucked beneath the Bible, one she hadn't touched in months. It was her prayer journal, filled with dreams and promises she'd felt God place on her heart. She flipped it open, and a single sentence stood out, written in her own handwriting. "God is calling you to a new land, like Abraham. Trust Him." Her breath caught. She'd written those words after a sermon last year, but they felt alive now, as if God Himself were speaking. Hannah's mind raced. A new land? What did that mean? Was she supposed to leave everything behind, like Abraham in Genesis 12 verse 1, when God said, "Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you"? The idea was terrifying. She had no job, no savings, and no clear direction. Yet the words in her journal burned in her heart, refusing to be ignored. She closed her eyes, picturing Abraham stepping into the unknown, his faith unwavering despite the uncertainty. A memory surfaced, her grandmother's voice, soft and steady, reading Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths." Hannah had clung to that verse during her father's illness, when every day felt like a battle. Now, it returned like a lifeline. She didn't need to understand the path, she just needed to trust the one who knew it. The clock struck 1, and Hannah made a decision. She would seek God daily, starting tonight. She grabbed a pen and began to write in her journal. Asterisk, Lord, I don't know where you're leading, but I'm listening. Guide me, step by step. Asterisk as she wrote, a spark of hope flickered in her chest. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep her going. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but she knew who held tomorrow. Before she went to bed, Hannah prayed one last time. Father, give me this day my daily bread, as Jesus taught in Matthew 6 verse 11. Show me your plan, and give me the courage to follow. She climbed into bed, the shadows no longer as menacing. Somewhere in the stillness, she felt a whisper, not audible, but deep in her soul. Asterisk, I am with you, Hannah. Walk with me. Asterisk as she drifted to sleep, she sensed that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test her faith, stretch her heart, and reveal God's faithfulness in ways she could never imagine. The morning sun filtered through Hannah's curtains, painting soft streaks of gold across her apartment. She woke with a start, the words from her prayer journal echoing in her mind. Asterisk, God is calling you to a new land. Asterisk, for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of purpose, fragile but real. She brewed a cup of coffee, its bitter aroma grounding her as she sat at the kitchen table, Bible open. Today, she decided, would be different. She'd take the first step, whatever that meant, trusting God to reveal the path. Hannah flipped to Matthew 7 verse 7. Asterisk, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. Asterisk, the verse felt like a challenge, daring her to act on her faith. But where to start? Her savings were dwindling, and job applications had yielded nothing but rejections. She glanced at her phone, tempted to scroll through job boards, but something stopped her. Instead, she opened her email and found a message from an old colleague, Mark, inviting her to a community outreach meeting that evening. It wasn't a job offer, just a casual invite, but it felt significant, like a breadcrumb on God's trail. As she prepared to leave, doubt crept in. What if this was a waste of time? What if she was misreading God's signs? She pictured herself at the meeting, surrounded by familiar faces, all pitying her for losing her job. The thought made her stomach churn. She gripped the edge of the table, whispering, Asterisk, Lord, give me strength. If this is your way, help me walk it. Asterisk, her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Asterisk, faith isn't the absence of fear, Hannah. It's moving forward despite it. Asterisk, she grabbed her coat and headed out, her heart a battlefield of hope and hesitation. The community center was a short walk away, its brick facade a reminder of her past life. Inside, the meeting room buzzed with chatter. Mark greeted her warmly, his smile easing her nerves. Hannah, it's been too long. We're planning a new outreach for homeless families. Could use your expertise. His words sparked something in her, a sense of being needed, even if just for tonight. She nodded, forcing a smile, and took a seat. As the group discussed logistics, Hannah's mind wandered. She remembered a woman she'd helped at the center years ago, Clara, who'd been homeless but found stability through their programs. Clara's gratitude had fueled Hannah's passion, but now, without her role, she felt like an outsider. A man across the table, Tom, spoke up, his tone sharp. We need professionals for this, not volunteers who come and go. His glance lingered on Hannah, and she felt the sting. Was he questioning her place here? Her cheeks burned, but she stayed silent, praying for peace. After the meeting, Mark pulled her aside. Hannah, there's a part-time role opening up with the outreach team. It's not much, but I thought of you. Interested? Her heart leapt, but caution held her back. The pay was low, and it wasn't her old job. Was this God's plan, or a compromise? She thanked Mark and promised to pray about it. On the walk home, she wrestled with the decision. The night air was cool, and the stars above seemed to whisper, Asterisk, trust me. Asterisk. Back in her apartment, Hannah opened her Bible to Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. The words humbled her. She'd been trying to control her future, but God was asking for surrender. She knelt and prayed, Lord, if this outreach role is your will, open my heart to it. Show me the next step. As she prayed, a memory surfaced, her first day at the community center, nervous but excited, trusting God had led her there. Maybe this was another beginning, small but significant. Before bed, she wrote in her journal, Asterisk, today, I took a step. It's not clear, but I'm trusting you, Lord. Asterisk, she felt a quiet assurance, like a seed planted in fertile soil. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was learning to walk by faith, one step at a time. Hannah woke to the sound of rain pattering against her window, a steady rhythm that matched her restless heart. The outreach meeting lingered in her mind, as did Mark's offer. She wanted to believe it was God's answer, but doubts gnawed at her. The part-time role felt like a step backward, a far cry from the stability she'd lost. As she sipped her coffee, she opened her Bible to Psalm 46 verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. She clung to the promise, but trouble seemed to be closing in. Her phone buzzed with a text from her landlord. Rent's due next week. Please confirm payment. Her heart sank. She had enough for one more month, maybe two if she cut corners. The pressure was mounting, and the outreach job's modest pay wouldn't cover her bills. She stared at the text, her mind racing. Should she take the job out of desperation, or wait for something better? The uncertainty felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. To clear her head, Hannah decided to visit the park near her apartment. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and the grass glistening. She sat on a bench, watching families stroll by, their laughter a stark contrast to her inner turmoil. A young boy dropped his balloon, and his mother knelt to comfort him. The scene reminded Hannah of her work at the center, where small acts of kindness had made a difference. She longed to feel that purpose again, but fear held her back. As she prayed silently, a stranger approached, an older woman with kind eyes, carrying a basket of flowers. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. Hannah nodded, and the woman introduced herself as Esther. They chatted about the weather, then Esther shared her story. She'd lost her husband years ago and faced financial ruin, but prayer and small steps of faith had led her to start a flower business. God doesn't always show the whole path, Esther said, but he lights the next step. Her words struck Hannah like a revelation, echoing Proverbs 16 verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Encouraged, Hannah returned home and called Mark to accept the outreach role. He was thrilled, but warned her the team was understaffed and the work would be grueling. She thanked him, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. That evening, she attended her first outreach planning session. The room was tense. Tom, the skeptic from the last meeting, questioned every idea, and another team member, Lisa, seemed overwhelmed. Hannah offered a suggestion about partnering with local shelters, but Tom dismissed it curtly. Her confidence wavered, but she remembered Esther's words and pressed on. Later, Lisa confided in Hannah about her own struggles, balancing work and caring for her sick mother. Hannah listened, offering a prayer that brought tears to Lisa's eyes. For the first time in weeks, Hannah felt useful, like God was working through her. But as she walked home, a new fear emerged. What if she couldn't handle the job's demands? The storm of doubt was growing, and she sensed it would test her faith in ways she wasn't prepared for. Hannah's first week in the outreach role was a whirlwind. She spent long hours coordinating supplies, meeting families, and navigating team dynamics. The work was fulfilling, but Tom's constant criticism weighed on her. He questioned her decisions, implying she wasn't qualified without her old title. Each jab chipped away at her confidence, making her wonder if she'd made the right choice. At night, she prayed for patience, clinging to James 1 verses 2-3. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. One afternoon, while sorting donations, Hannah overheard Tom talking to Mark. "She's not cut out for this," Tom said. "We need someone with experience, not a charity case." The words stung, and Hannah retreated to the storage room, her heart pounding. She felt like an imposter, exposed and unworthy. Tears welled up as she questioned God. Why did you lead me here if I'm just going to fail? She remembered the Israelites in Exodus 14, trapped by the Red Sea, doubting God's plan. Like them, she felt cornered, but she whispered, Lord, part the waters for me. That evening, a new challenge arose. A local businessman, Mr. Carter, offered to fund the outreach program, but with strings attached. He wanted control over the budget and insisted on prioritizing certain neighborhoods, wealthier ones that didn't align with the program's mission. Mark was tempted by the funds, but Hannah sensed danger. Something about Mr. Carter's polished smile reminded her of the Gibeonites' deception in Joshua 9, where appearances hid ulterior motives. She voiced her concerns to Mark, but he brushed them off, saying, "We can't afford to say no." Hannah's unease grew. She spent the night in prayer, seeking clarity. Psalm 32 verse 8 came to mind. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will guide you with my eye. The next day, she researched Mr. Carter and discovered he'd been involved in questionable real estate deals, profiting from displacing low-income families. Her suspicions confirmed, She confronted Mark, urging him to reconsider. Tom overheard and accused her of overstepping, escalating the tension. Hannah felt isolated, caught between doing what was right and keeping the peace. As she walked home, a street preacher's voice caught her attention. Trust God, not man. The words pierced her heart, reminding her of Psalm 118 verse 8. She realized she'd been seeking validation from Tom and Mark, not God. That night, she journaled, Lord, help me stand firm, even if I stand alone. The danger wasn't just Mr. Carter's offer, it was the temptation to compromise her values for security. The outreach program was at a crossroads. Mr. Carter's offer loomed large, promising resources but threatening the mission's integrity. Hannah's opposition to the deal had strained her relationship with Mark, who was desperate to keep the program afloat. Tom's hostility grew, and even Lisa, once an ally, seemed distant, overwhelmed by her own burdens. Hannah felt like David facing Goliath, armed only with faith and a sling of conviction. One morning, Hannah received a call from a recruiter offering a corporate job with a generous salary, far more than the outreach role paid. The position was unrelated to her passion for community work, but it promised stability. She hesitated, remembering Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Was this God's way of providing, or a temptation to abandon his call? The offer was a lifeline, but it felt like a detour from the path she'd started. She met Sarah for a video call, hoping her friend's wisdom would clarify things. Sarah listened patiently, then said, Hannah, God's plans often look impractical. Remember when I moved away? I was scared, but God used it to grow my faith. Sarah's words echoed Hannah's journal entry about Abraham's journey. She prayed that night, asking God to reveal his will. A dream came to her, a narrow path winding through a forest, with a light at the end. She woke with a sense of direction but no clear answer. At work, the team met to vote on Mr. Carter's offer. Hannah shared her findings about his past, urging caution. To her surprise, Lisa supported her, citing a similar experience with a shady donor. Mark wavered, torn between pragmatism and principle. Tom, however, pushed for the deal, accusing Hannah of sabotaging the program. The meeting ended in a stalemate, and Hannah felt the weight of her choices. The corporate job offer sat in her inbox, a siren song of ease and security. That evening, Hannah attended a church service, seeking solace. The pastor preached on Matthew 7 verses 13 to 14. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. The message hit home. The corporate job was the wide gate, tempting but misaligned with God's call. She resolved to stay with the outreach, trusting God to provide. But as she left the church, a text from Mark arrived. Carter's threatening to pull out. We need to decide tomorrow. The pressure intensified, and Hannah wondered if her faith could withstand the coming storm. Hannah barely slept, haunted by the looming decision about Mr. Carter's offer. She rose early, her apartment quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. As she prayed, a memory surfaced, her father's final days, when he'd held her hand and said, Hannah, God's faithfulness never fails, even when we can't see it. His words had anchored her through grief, and now they felt like a lifeline. She opened her Bible to Lamentations 3 verses 22 to 23. Through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Determined to stand firm, Hannah arrived at the community center early. She found an old photo album in the storage room, filled with pictures from her time at the center. One image showed her with Clara, the woman she'd helped years ago, both smiling broadly. The memory bolstered her resolve. She couldn't let Mr. Carter's money compromise the program's mission to serve people like Clara. The final meeting about the offer was tense. Mark presented the pros and cons, his voice strained. Hannah spoke passionately, recounting Clara's story and the program's impact. Lisa nodded, but Tom interrupted, accusing Hannah of idealism. We're not a charity for your ego, he snapped. His words cut deep, reopening wounds of self-doubt. Before she could respond, Mark called for a vote. To Hannah's relief, the team rejected Carter's offer, prioritizing integrity over funds. Mark thanked Hannah privately, but Tom stormed out, leaving a chill in the air. That afternoon, Hannah visited her mother's grave, seeking clarity. The cemetery was peaceful, with birds chirping softly. She knelt by the headstone, tears falling as she whispered, Mom, I'm trying to trust God, but it's so hard. A breeze rustled the trees, and she felt a gentle peace, as if her mother's prayers were still with her. She remembered Philippians 4 verse 13. Asterisk, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Asterisk, the verse renewed her courage. Back home, Hannah received an unexpected letter from Clara, who'd tracked her down through the center. Clara wrote about how Hannah's kindness had changed her life, urging her to keep serving. The letter was a divine reminder that God was still working through her. But as she read, her phone buzzed with a voicemail from the recruiter. The corporate job offer was expiring soon. The temptation resurfaced, stronger than ever, testing her commitment to God's path. The outreach program faced new challenges without Carter's funding. Supplies dwindled, and morale was low. Hannah threw herself into the work, coordinating volunteers and seeking donations, but the strain was evident. Tom's absence left a gap, and rumors swirled that he was rallying support for a rival program. Hannah felt betrayed, wondering if her stand against Carter had caused more harm than good. She prayed for wisdom, clinging to Proverbs 2 verse 6, asterisk, for the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Asterisk. One day, while delivering supplies to a shelter, Hannah met a young man named Daniel. He was a volunteer, quiet but dedicated, with a warm smile that put her at ease. They worked side by side, sorting blankets and chatting about their faith. Daniel shared his story. He'd grown up in foster care, finding purpose through a church that supported him. God always sends the right people at the right time, he said, quoting Romans 8 verse 28, asterisk, all things work together for good to those who love God. Asterisk, his words resonated, lifting Hannah's spirits. Daniel's optimism was infectious, but Hannah's doubts lingered. She confided in him about the corporate job offer, admitting her fear of financial ruin. He listened thoughtfully, then shared a story about a mentor who'd encouraged him to trust God during a low point. Sometimes, God's provision looks like a mustard seed, he said. Small, but it grows. His perspective challenged Hannah to reframe her struggles as opportunities for growth. That evening, Hannah attended a fundraising event for the outreach program. Daniel was there, helping with setup. As they worked, she noticed Tom in the crowd, speaking animatedly with potential donors. Her stomach tightened. Was he undermining the program? She confronted him, but he deflected, saying, I'm just helping the community. His evasiveness fueled her suspicions, deepening the rift between them. Later, Daniel found Hannah sitting alone, visibly shaken. He offered to pray with her, and their shared prayer brought a moment of peace. Hannah felt a connection with him, not romantic but spiritual, as if God had sent him to remind her she wasn't alone. As she drove home, she reflected on Daniel's words about mustard seeds. Maybe God was planning something new, but the shadow of Tom's actions loomed, threatening to uproot her fragile hope. Hannah's days were a blur of outreach work and inner turmoil. Daniel's encouragement kept her going, but the corporate job offer weighed heavily. She imagined the security it promised, no more late rent payments, no more scraping by. Yet every time she considered accepting, a knot formed in her stomach, as if God were whispering, asterisk, wait. Asterisk, she turned to Psalm 27 verse 14. Asterisk, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Asterisk, the verse was a reminder, but waiting felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. The outreach program struggled to stay afloat. A key donor pulled out, citing Tom's rival initiative as a better investment. Hannah's heart sank. Had her decision to reject Carter's offer doomed the program? She confronted Mark, who admitted he was considering merging with Tom's group to survive. The idea horrified Hannah. It would mean compromising the mission. She argued passionately, but Mark's exhaustion was palpable. We're out of options, Hannah, he said. Her faith wavered, torn between loyalty to the program and fear of failure. At home, Hannah found an old sermon note from her father, asterisk, God's delays are not denials. Asterisk, the word stirred her, but doubt crept in. What if she was clinging to a sinking ship? She called Sarah, who sensed her distress. Hannah, God's timing is perfect, even when it feels late. Remember Lazarus? Jesus waited, but he had a plan. Sarah's reference to John 11 reignited Hannah's hope, but the pressure was relentless. One evening, Hannah joined Daniel at the shelter, where they served meals to families. A young girl, Mia, thanked Hannah with a drawing of a heart. The gesture melted her defenses, reminding her why she'd chosen this path. But as they cleaned up, Daniel shared troubling news. Tom was spreading rumors that Hannah had mismanaged funds. The accusation was false, but it could destroy her reputation. Fury and fear battled within her. She wanted to confront Tom, but Daniel urged her to pray first, citing Ephesians 6 verse 12. Asterisk, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Asterisk. Hannah spent the night in prayer, wrestling with her anger and fear. She journaled, asterisk, Lord, I'm tired of fighting. Show me how to trust you in this mess. Asterisk, a peace settled over her, not complete but enough to face the next day. The malfunction alone remained, but she sensed God was preparing her for a breakthrough. The rumors about Hannah spread, casting a shadow over the outreach program. Volunteers whispered, and donors hesitated. Hannah felt like Joseph, betrayed and misunderstood, yet she clung to Genesis 50 verse 20. Asterisk, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Asterisk, she resolved to clear her name, but the corporate job offer expired, leaving her with no fallback. The loss stung, but it also clarified her purpose. She was committed to God's path, no matter the cost. Hannah and Daniel dug into Tom's rival program, uncovering troubling details. He partnered with a developer planning to gentrify the neighborhoods the outreach served, displacing families. The revelation confirmed Hannah's fears. Tom's motives were self-serving. She shared the evidence with Mark, who was shocked but hesitant to act, fearing backlash. Hannah's frustration grew, but she remembered David's restraint with Saul in 1 Samuel 24. She chose to trust God's justice over her own. One day, Clara visited the center, bringing her daughter to thank Hannah. Clara revealed she'd heard the rumors but believed in Hannah's integrity. You helped me when no one else did, she said. God sees your heart. Her words were a balm, echoing Hebrews 6 verse 10. Asterisk, God is not unjust to forget your work and labor of love. Asterisk, Clara's visit renewed Hannah's strength, but the battle wasn't over. At a community forum, Hannah confronted Tom publicly, presenting evidence of his developer ties. The crowd was stunned, and Tom's defenses crumbled. Mark, emboldened, announced the outreach program would remain independent. The victory was sweet, but Hannah felt no joy, only relief. She realized the real fight was within, trusting God's timing over her need for vindication. That night, Hannah dreamed of a river, calm and clear, leading to a distant light. She woke with a sense of peace, sensing God was unraveling the secrets of his promise. The outreach program was safe for now, but new challenges awaited, and Hannah knew she'd need every ounce of faith to face them. With Tom's influence diminished, the outreach program regained momentum. Donors returned, and volunteers rallied, inspired by Hannah's stand. She felt a cautious optimism, but exhaustion lingered. The past months had tested her faith, and she wondered if she could endure more. She turned to 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. Asterisk, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Asterisk, the verse reminded her that God's power shone through her frailty. A new challenge emerged when a city official proposed regulations that would limit the program's operations. The rules seemed designed to favor corporate interests, threatening the shelters Hannah served. She organized a petition, rallying the community, but progress was slow. Doubt crept in. Had she fought one battle only to face another? She prayed, Lord, I'm weary. Show me you're still here. One evening, Daniel invited Hannah to a prayer vigil at his church. The small congregation gathered, their voices rising in worship. An elderly man shared a testimony about surviving a fire, trusting God through loss. His story mirrored Hannah's struggles, and she felt God's presence like a warm embrace. During prayer, Daniel whispered, Hannah, God's not done with you. His words echoed Isaiah 40 verse 31. Asterisk, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. Asterisk. The vigil inspired Hannah to press on. She met with the city official, presenting the petition and sharing stories of the families the program helped. To her surprise, the official softened, promising to reconsider the regulations. It wasn't a victory yet, but it was progress. Hannah felt God's hand, guiding her through the trial. As she walked home, a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling in the distance. She smiled, unafraid, remembering Psalm 29 verse 3. Asterisk, the voice of the Lord is over the waters. Asterisk, the trial wasn't over, but Hannah sensed she was nearing the end of this chapter, stronger for it. The city council voted to amend the regulations, allowing the outreach program to continue its work. Hannah stood in the community center, watching volunteers prepare for a new initiative. The room buzzed with hope, a stark contrast to the despair of months past. She opened her Bible to Psalm 30 verse 5. Asterisk, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Asterisk, the verse captured her journey. Darkness had lingered, but God's light had broken through. Hannah reflected on the trials she'd faced. Losing her job had felt like the end, but it was the beginning of a deeper faith. She'd battled doubt, betrayal, and temptation, yet God had guided her, step by step. She thought of Esther, Clara, Daniel, and the countless others God had sent to encourage her. Each encounter was a thread in his tapestry, weaving a story of redemption. Mark approached, offering her a full-time role as outreach coordinator. The pay was modest, but it was enough. Hannah accepted, tears in her eyes, knowing this was God's provision. She called Sarah, sharing the news. "You trusted God," Sarah said. "He never fails." Their conversation reminded Hannah of John 16 verse 33, "In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." That evening, Hannah visited the shelter, where Mia, the girl who'd given her the drawing, ran to hug her. Mia's mother thanked Hannah, saying, "You gave us hope when we had none." The words humbled her, a reminder that God had used her weakness to touch lives. She prayed silently, thanking God for his faithfulness. As she walked home, the stars shone brightly, a canvas of God's glory. Hannah felt a peace that surpassed understanding, knowing she'd followed his call. The journey wasn't over, but she was ready for whatever lay ahead, anchored in his love. Hannah stood in her apartment, her prayer journal open to a new page. The past year had transformed her, teaching her to seek God daily, trust his timing, and embrace his plan. She wrote, "Lord, thank you for leading me through the darkness. Your light never fails." She opened her Bible to Revelation 21 verse 5. "Behold, I make all things new." The verse felt like a promise for the future, a new chapter in her journey with God. The outreach program thrived, serving more families than ever. Hannah's role as coordinator was challenging but rewarding, a testament to God's provision. She and Daniel remained close, their friendship a source of strength. Clara visited often, her daughter now enrolled in school, a symbol of hope restored. Even Tom had reached out, apologizing for his actions, and Hannah forgave him, inspired by Colossians 3 verse 13, "As Christ forgave you, so you also must do." One Sunday, Hannah spoke at her church, sharing her story. She recounted the night she'd heard God's call, the trials that followed, and the joy of his faithfulness. The congregation listened, some in tears, as she quoted Psalm 119 verse 105, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." She encouraged them to seek God daily, trusting him through every storm. The applause was warm, but Hannah's heart was fixed on God, the true source of her strength. As she prepared for a new outreach project, Hannah felt a stirring, a sense that God was calling her to something bigger, perhaps a ministry of her own. The idea was daunting, but she remembered Abraham, Esther, and David, who stepped into the unknown with faith. She prayed, "Lord, I'm ready. Lead me to your next land." The future was uncertain, but Hannah knew God's promises were sure. To all who followed Hannah's journey, thank you for walking with us through this story of faith and triumph. May it inspire you to seek God daily, trusting his guidance in every season. If this message has blessed you, share it with someone who needs hope, and let's spread the light of God's love. We're grateful for your support and prayers, and we invite you to leave your prayer requests so we can lift them to God. May the grace and peace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all, now and forever. Amen.